Carbon is present everywhere, from the rocks and sediments to the ocean, atmosphere, and even living organisms. These are the reservoir through which carbon cycles. It is the foundation of all life on Earth. We are made of carbon. We eat carbon. Our human civilization, like our homes, economies, and everyday routines, are also built on the element of carbon. We need it, but that need is also the result of a devastating global crisis caused by our actions, such as global warming and climate change.
To further understand how this came to be, let us first discuss how carbon normally cycles. As said, carbon cycle can occur through land, air, water, and living organisms. To start off, the carbon cycle begins by the entry of carbon, the form of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which originated through the process of respiration and combustion. Then through the process of photosynthesis, from plants, both land and water. Carbon dioxide is taken from the air and transformed into sugars for energy used in their own reproduction. Next is the movement of plants to animals and onto the food chain. When consumed, the carbon in plant moves to the animals that ate them, and animals that eat the other animals get the same carbon from their food. Lastly, is the return of the carbon into the atmosphere due to the byproduct caused by decomposition of dead bodies. Hence, if left undisturbed, the carbon cycle maintains a steady concentration of carbon within the atmosphere, land, plants, and ocean. But once anything changes, not only does it affect one reservoir, but others as well. Which is why, with this in mind, what foreign factor could affect this steady cycle?
With the mention of foreign factors, the term invasive species came to mind. To define, invasive species are one of the leading causes of global biodiversity loss. They can damage native habitats, spread diseases, cause extinctions, and leave massive cleanup bills in their wake. It is also commonly defined as any living organism that is not native to an area that causes economic harm, environmental harm, or damages to human health. One example is the water hyacinth, an invasive plant that increases carbon cycling and poses a serious threat to the environment. When introduced into a freshwater environment, it has a number of adverse effects. It reduces biodiversity by crowding out native plants at the surface and below the water surface. Water hyacinth plants also degrade water quality by obstructing the air-water interface and significantly lowering oxygen levels in the water, thereby eliminating aquatic animals such as fish and contributing to the carbon cycling. In relation, despite this definition, everywhere humans take food, ecological changes to the area always seem to occur. Natural habitats have become unlivable. Countless species have become extinct. And beautiful landscapes have been reduced to infrastructures for the purpose of human advancement and need. Just why, with this in mind, are we still not considered invasive to this planet and to the other organisms that live on it?
To elaborate on this stance, humans have a significant impact on the global carbon cycle. Excess carbon other than carbon dioxide is emitted into the atmosphere through the combustion of fossil fuels. The burning of fossil fuels by humans has an impact on the carbon cycle because it releases vast amount of carbon into the atmosphere, which causes the carbon dioxide rate to rise, resulting in the greenhouse effect, which eventually leads to the global warming. Forest cutting is another anthropogenic effect of the global carbon cycle, severely impacted by deforestation. By removing trees that absorb carbon dioxide through photosynthesis, you increase carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. It also reduces the amount of moisture in the soil and raises the temperature of the soil. This will result in a drier forest floor, which releases carbon into the sky and increase the risk of wildfires. Lastly, land use changes can also contribute to carbon emissions. Changes in land use account for 10% of global carbon emissions. This primarily impacts short-term reserves and is linked to climate change. Tilling the soil, for example, causes the organic matter in the ground to decompose and oxidize very quickly. This indicates that we are dealing with two independent flaws in the system. one draining the land biota reservoir and the other draining the soil reservoir, which both flows send carbon to the atmosphere.
Other than that, humans not only can cause damage to other organisms but also to themselves. To understand this, let us take the concept of epigenetics. Epigenetics is the study of heritable changes in gene expression without changes to the underlying DNA sequence. Moreover, epigenomes of all organisms react more to the stimuli caused by environmental conditions. Our actions have resulted in devastating cases of global warming and climate change, at which some aspects of these cases can impact the epigenetic factors. Rising water temperature means less dissolved oxygen available for fish. As a result, several species have experienced changes in their epigenome, whereas fish populations decrease to adapt. Meanwhile, increasing temperatures on land are also resulting in epigenomic responses from organisms, especially from plants. Climate change has resulted in dramatic altercations in rainfall patterns, wherein some places experiences intense droughts and others receive excessive amount of precipitation, which plants must quickly adapt in order to grow. These cases result in probable food shortages. For humans, diet is an important factor to our epigenetics. Those experiencing food shortages will most likely be the first to experience observable epigenetic alterations from dietary stress. Alterations in water composition due to the said factors earlier could draw out greater amounts of heavy metals from ground and other sources, resulting in greater human exposure and epigenetic consequences. Changes in temperature and rainfall are affecting air pollution levels, and the human population is exposed to a range of chemical toxicants, many of which have been suspected of altering the human epigenome.
So, what can be done? Everyone plays an important factor that affects the conditions of our environment. Our one contribution to this phenomenon may seem irrelevant to fixing the issue at first, but real change and growth will surely occur once all our collective efforts to make a change is big enough to make a difference. We can start by simply changing our daily routines and properly scrutinizing which of our habits and personal choices produce greenhouse gas emissions. Also, don't be afraid to share this belief with others and help them realize the importance of their contributions. And tell them, if you can't handle the heat, reduce your carbon footprint.